Life for All presents Daily Food Series, Galatians, the Only Gospel, the Gospel of Christ. Title of Book 2, The Hearing of Faith, by Pedro. Week 1, Paul's Faithfulness to the Truth of the Gospel. Wednesday, Withstanding Pressure to Preserve the Truth of the Gospel. Read with prayer. Knowing that a man is not justified by the works of the law, but by faith in Jesus Christ, even we have believed in Christ Jesus, that we might be justified by faith in Christ, and not by the works of the law. For by the works of the law no flesh shall be justified. Galatians chapter 2, verse 16. Paul was a leader sensitive to the Spirit's direction. Since the Judaizers who came out of Jerusalem still were not clear about the truth of the gospel that Paul preached, the Spirit revealed to him the need to go up there and present the content of this gospel to them. Galatians chapter 2, verse 2. Moreover, he sought fellowship with the apostles in that church to address the issue that some Jews demanded that Gentiles, besides being converted, also be circumcised as a condition for God's eternal salvation. The truth of the gospel is fundamentally based on the grace that God granted us through the work of Christ on the cross. God never imposed any condition beyond our faith in Christ. When we believe, we are saved by grace. For God, it is enough to believe. Even though the apostles in Jerusalem had a higher status than Paul, he was never intimidated. Yet, not even Titus, who was with me, being a Greek, was compelled to be circumcised. And this occurred because of false brethren secretly brought in, who came in by stealth to spy out our liberty, which we have in Christ Jesus, that they might bring us into bondage, to whom we did not yield submission even for an hour, that the truth of the gospel might continue with you. Galatians chapter 2, verses 3 through 5. Paul and Titus did not submit to what was not the truth of the gospel. When the believing Jews rose up to impose on the Gentiles that, in order to be saved, they would have to practice circumcision and the law of Moses, Paul was categorical. We did not yield submission even for an hour. What does the practice of the law of Moses and circumcision mean for us today? It means that we stop depending on the Spirit and the power in the Word and try to perfect ourselves based on our natural efforts. In other words, it means doing God's work based on our resume, biblical knowledge, and our own will. This is the illusion of all religions. By himself, man will never be able to please God. Let us remain in simplicity like children, allowing ourselves to be led by the blowing wind of the Spirit. That is why Paul, Barnabas, and Titus did not yield to the Judaizers even for an hour, to protect the saints from their attempt to bring them back into the slavery of the law. They were absolute, so faithful to this truth that the Judaizers did not even dare pressure Titus, who was a Greek Gentile, to be circumcised. The only law we follow is the law of Christ, the law of the Spirit. Why should we not live according to religious laws or external rules? Because the law is powerless against our flesh. Romans chapter 8, verse 3. It is as if it were, quote-unquote, sick, weakened when facing the force of sin that dwells in human flesh. However, when we crucify the flesh, We are no longer held hostage by the power of sin. Romans chapter 6, verse 6. If we continue to live in our old man, we will remain captive to sin. By his own strength, man will never be able to free himself from this prison and will live in constant conflict, desiring to practice the law and do what pleases God, but lacking the strength to do so because sin is in his flesh. Romans chapter 7, verses 14 through 21. The practice of the law does not show us a way out. It only exposes how weak we are toward sin. Why return to that prison again? That is precisely what the Judaizers were doing when they demanded that Gentiles who were converted be circumcised and practice the law of Moses. Paul, Barnabas, and Titus could not give in to that pressure. Their conviction in the truth of the gospel made them absolute and caused them not to yield to the pressure of the Judaizers. So, we must be the same. In some situations in life, we must be flexible. But when it comes to the truth of the gospel, we must not yield under any circumstances.